Howdy! Welcome, y'all, to the movie theater lobby. I'm your Huckleberry. I'm Brandon.
I'm Leia. And no, Brandon, wrong movie. That's Tombstone.
Okay. What about this? If you're gonna shoot, shoot. Don't talk.
Nope. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay, all right then. Try slap some bacon on a biscuit and let's go. We're burning daylight.
Brandon, that's the Cowboys. We're talking about Dead Man today.
Is this a lie? Or a white man's trick?
No. I'm William Blake.
And you are a dead man.
Dead Man. They call it an acid western.
An acid western.
The term
I
that
really
they
like
coined.
that term,
Yeah.
by the way.
It is preferable not to travel with a dead man. A quote from Henry Michaud that shows up before the title screen, honestly. Wheels turn, axles spin, the rhythmic clack of the train track clicks us along. Sitting silently is a man we will come to know as William Blake. Bill Blake, I guess he goes by in the beginning, Bill, played by Johnny Depp. Time and miles pass anonymously and monotonously as William does everything he can to while away his travel. The scenery changes, as do his fellow travelers. Eventually, Blake gets a friendly but odd visit from the train fireman, which is a cameo by one and only Crispin Glover.
So
and we
weird.
learn, definitely weird. It's very almost unsettling,
Yeah.
to be honest. And we learn that William is heading from Cleveland.
And also, where is it that you're from?
Cleveland.
Cleveland's.
To the frontier town of Machine to take a job as an accountant at Dickinson's Metalworks.
I'll tell you one thing for sure. I wouldn't trust no words written down on no piece of paper, especially from no Dickinson out in the town of Machine.
Moving right along as speedy as the locomotive, Blake does indeed arrive at Machine. He finds a dirty, seedy town of mud, filth, lawlessness, and disrespect which has the specter of death hanging over it. Blake finds his way to Dickinson Metalworks and subsequently finds his promised position filled, as he has arrived a month too late. A man of steadfast gumption, of course, Blake calls out the apparent mistake and demands an audience with Mr. Dickinson. Which Blake very quickly leaves as Mr. Dickinson shows the meek man his shotgun and the door. Nearly penniless and utterly downtrodden, Blake finds his way to the saloon to drown his sorrows, as shallow as that drowning may be, given his finances. Crossing paths with an unfortunately disrespected woman named Thel, played by Millie Avital, the pair find their way to a cozy bed and spend the night. Perhaps Blake's fortunes are looking up. Nope, never mind. It seems we're putting the cart before the horse here. As post-coitus, a man barges in, a man who's apparently Thel's former romantic partner. In a fit of rage and jealousy, the spurned lover aims to shoot Blake, but in an act of selflessness, Thel jumps between the two men. Blake finds a gun and fires a retaliatory shot, well, maybe a few shots, killing the rejected paramour. Now finding himself also shot, a lot of bullets.
Lots of bullets going, flying left and right.
Around. Blake jumps out the window and passes out in the muddy thoroughway. Upon waking, Blake finds himself Thel-less, jobless, penniless, tobaccoless, which is fine as he doesn't smoke, and lifeless, almost. A native man kneels over him attempting to dig the white man's metal from Blake's chest.
Here's white man's meadow next to your heart. I tried to cut it out, but it's too deep inside. A knife would cut your heart instead and release the spirit from within.
And the clock on Blake's life begins ticking down.
Stupid white man.
Stupid fucking white man.
Riding with Exebiche,
We prefer to be called nobody.
who happens to be played by Gary Farmer, Blake makes his way across a desolate wilderness to a place where the waters are a mirror, so he can pass through their reflection into a world that is the exact reverse of this one. But this journey will not be easy, as there are bounty hunters and lawmen on his tail, all because, of course, he had the misfortune of shooting Mr. Dickinson's son, Charlie, and also stole Mr. Dickinson's Pinto, and also shot Thel.
I didn't kill Thel.
So, Blake and nobody are on their way. But I'm pretty happy right here, so let's just say adieu to these unfortunate souls and leave them on their journey as they try to escape or at least elude death for a bit longer.
You don't get too attached to anybody in this movie, huh?
No, not so much. There's a lot of death that comes through this movie. But Leia, honestly, I'm pretty excited to talk about this one. I'm not traditionally a Western fan.
No, me either.
But I really liked this one.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when we were talking about La La Land, I didn't really care for La La Land because it wasn't a traditional musical. And in this case, I liked this one because it was not a traditional Western.
But you like musicals.
I do.
And you don't like Westerns.
Don't particularly like Westerns.
Let's talk about Jim Jarmusch.
Yes. Director, writer, all-around fancy guy.
He reminds me a little bit of Lynch in a way.
In his very auteurness.
Yeah.
He's got a vision, and that's what he aims to bring
He wants
to
to have control of every aspect of it. Otherwise, he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
It's not his thing. He had done Coffee and Cigarettes, Broken Flowers. His most mainstream recognition is with the film Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai. He also was added to the National Film Registry in 2002 for Stranger Than Paradise.
Okay,
It's another film he did.
He likes to stick to the indie scene.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people who are big movie lovers probably know some of these films.
Yeah, he often has to work very hard to get his funding because he doesn't like going through studios. So he'll often get funding from a lot of overseas sources, smaller studios, things like that. He also fairly recently was responsible for the very quirky, underappreciated zombie movie, The Dead Don't Die.
You would know that one. So I said that he's most well known for the film Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai. Just a little tidbit, Gary Farmer actually has a cameo in that movie.
He does.
Yeah, as nobody.
Yeah.
Saying stupid fucking white man, which is kind of a thing he says throughout Dead Man. So.
Yeah.
What name were you given at birth, stupid white man?
We're just going to drop all pretense and say spoilers begin here even.
Yeah.
God damn your soul to the fires of hell.
He already has.
Jim Jarmusch has said that he was very sad to have killed off nobody. And his style of writing is not so much where he believes he's writing the characters and the story, more like the characters and story are revealing themselves to him.
Very much like Lynch.
As he writes. Right, yes, exactly. And unfortunately, the story and the character told him nobody had to die. Wait.
We know what you mean.
Yes.
Yes.
He had to die at the end.
Yeah.
And he was completely sad about it. So he reincarnated nobody in Ghost Dog.
All right. Well, I mean, it worked.
And the funny thing was, there was another anecdote I had read in an interview. Jim Jarmusch had said that after Ghost Dog, when he was, I forget what movie he was working, well, he had run across Gary Farmer while he was kind of mid to end production on this newer entry. And Gary Farmer said, "Hey, when am I coming back again?" And Jim kind of said, "Oh, yeah, and sorry, I didn't put you in this new one, just didn't really have a place." And so Gary Farmer responded to him by saying, "I know, that's fucked up, man." So even Gary Farmer really enjoyed that role.
The only other little tidbit that I wanted to share is he's the founding member of the Sons of Lee Marvin group, right. Which is like a funny kind of semi-secret society of different artists that resemble that actor. And I saw all the pictures of him, and I'm like, all right, yeah. I can kind of see that. It's weird, but it's especially him.
It's an odd club to have started. You don't have to look exact. You don't have to be a doppelganger.
No. It's
just there's maybe something in your facial structure or the way your hair, the way you talk or your hair sits or whatever.
Yeah.
Good for them for having fun, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, and did you notice the Lee Marvin connection in this movie? There's two lawmen that end up chasing after William Blake. They have just a really short part in the film because, of course, they die. Everyone dies.
Yeah, it's kind of
basically. Their names are Lee Hazelwood.
Oh,
and
right.
Marvin Throne Berry.
I did read about that.
Lee Marvin. But the funny thing is that reference goes even further because there also is a real life person called Lee Hazelwood, who is a singer, songwriter, producer from the 60s through the 80s, kind of was when he was active.
And Marv
Throneberry.
Yeah, I read about that one.
Do you remember what he was notable for? A Major League Baseball player in the 50s and 60s.
So we should move on to the actors then.
Yeah.
We got to talk about Johnny Depp.
Of course.
But he plays William Blake, of course. So Iggy Pop's in this film. He plays Salvatore Sally Jenko, the cowboy. Johnny Depp was in a band called The Kids, which actually opened for Iggy Pop. So it was almost like a
little high five.
Get together
Get back
again.
together.
Yeah. Pinging them back together again.
But I have to call out that his first major role in a film was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a huge horror fan. I cannot not mention, especially an iconic horror movie when I have the chance. He caught a lot of notoriety when he joined the 21 Jump Street TV series.
He did,
as well.
yeah. Johnny Depp is actually a huge fan of Buster Keaton, like a huge fan.
Yeah.
Some have actually even compared Johnny Depp to Buster Keaton in this movie. Johnny Depp wears a John Bull topper, and that kind of is similar to Buster's pork pie hat that he wears. And he also has kind of got that vague, inept vibe to him.
Yeah.
Same vibe that Keaton played in Go West from 1925. I wonder if Johnny Depp had watched some of that or knew about that already and kind of just emulated some of that.
Maybe informed his performance a little bit.
Yeah. So let's move on to Gary Farmer as Nobody. He plays a strong and opinionated Native American who forcibly was raised by white people and later given the mocking name
Exebiche.
Exebiche. I cannot say that.
My name is Exebiche. He who talks loud, saying nothing.
He who talks loud, saying nothing.
And he says in the movie that he just prefers to be called Nobody. And I think it works great on a lot of different levels, particularly the scene when William Blake, meets the three cowboys at the campfire, the kind of allegory for the three Goldilocks and the three bears situation.
Yeah.
They ask him, who you traveling with? And he says, nobody. Is he saying I'm traveling with nobody to throw them off the case? Or is he just flat out saying, hey, I'm traveling with nobody?
My Name is Nobody is actually an Italian Western film from 1973 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the name Nobody is kind of what's one of the oldest jokes in the book. The Odyssey tells in book 9 of Odysseus when fighting the Cyclops Polyphemus, using the name Nobody so that when Polyphemus shouted in pain to his fellow giants on the island that nobody was trying to kill him, no one bothered to come to his rescue. Yep. The same play was used in the Terence Hill Western, My Name is Nobody, from 1973. But that was only for morons. I don't know why I wrote that there. Anyway.
All right. I like that.
I don't know what I was writing. I think I might have been 5 drinks in or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like we said, it's a movie full of references to other things.
Yeah, and then Nobody's Name, He Who Talks Loud Saying Nothing, is actually a reference to a James Brown song as well.
Oh.
And that song is Talking Loudly and Saying Nothing.
All right, sure. Yeah, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Gary Farmer, of course, he actually is a First Nations actor from Canada.
Mm-hmm. And musician.
Yeah, from the Cayuga people. Like I said, I have to mention a horror film when they come across. He was in Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight.
He was, yes.
In fact, that was the first time I had ever seen him in something, at least that I had recognized.
He plays Bob Martell, if you don't know which character
Deputy
he is.
Bob.
He plays Deputy Bob. I had to look up some stills and I was like, it is him.
Absolutely
I totally recognize that now. He actually did start in a small part in Police Academy as well. Mm-hmm. But most recently, he has been in 26 episodes of Resident Alien as Dan 12trees, and I believe it's another police officer.
Did you hear about the anecdote that Jim Jarmusch told in an interview about how he ended up convincing Gary Farmer to be in the film?
Mm-mm.
So Gary Farmer, not an easy guy to get a hold of. He lives in the Canadian wilderness, like way out in the Canadian wilderness. He wrote the role of Nobody for Gary Farmer. In fact, Jim Jarmusch also has said in the past that when he writes roles, he always has somebody in mind for the roles he
knows who it's going to be.
And he said with very little exception, he's been very fortunate to almost always get the people that he has in mind. He got a hold of Gary Farmer, called him on the phone, and Gary Farmer said, okay, listen, I don't like to read scripts. Why don't you come up here and tell me your story? So that's a long way to go in Canada. So Jim Jarmusch was like, okay, well, how do I get there? Gary Farmer's explanation of directions to him was take a plane to, I think it was Toronto. Pretty sure it was Toronto. I'm sorry if I got that wrong.
Take a plane to the city.
Toronto.
Yeah.
He said, when you arrive, call me. If you don't get a hold of me, drive anyway. Rent a car, drive 4 hours north. I'm just probably in the wilderness when you call, when I might be in the forest. So just drive anyway. I'll be home. I'll be there when you get there.
So he gave him an address to meet him.
He gave him an address.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, he's just driving north.
Just drive north.
Just straight north, and you're going to hit his house?
Everyone who drives north will find Gary Farmer.
All right. Those are easy directions.
But Gary Farmer, he sat down with him, told him the whole story of Dead Man. Gary Farmer said, okay, well, let me think about it. By this time, it was really late at night. So Gary said, hey, listen, it's really late. Don't drive back today.
Yeah.
Why don't you sleep over there on the floor? In the morning, I'll make breakfast and I'll have my decision for you. Jim Jarmusch said, okay, sure.
Worth
I guess,
it.
Whatever, why not? So he slept on the floor. He said, Gary Farmer, just the nicest guy. He just totally amazing host.
He seems nice.
Woke up in the morning, had breakfast, and Gary Farmer said, yep, I'm in. Sounds great.
Awesome.
So,
it's quite a ways to go to get somebody to climb on board. But
something very, very similar happened with Jim Jarmusch when he was negotiating to get Neil Young in the movie.
Oh, really?
Or not in the movie, to do the
play
soundtrack.
to compose it.
Should I tell that story now or should I tell it later?
You can tell it now.
Tell it now. Okay, just real fast. I'll try to be faster.
Yeah, okay.
Got a hold of Neil Young, said, hey, would you do the soundtrack for my film? Neil Young said, okay, sure, but I don't want to just watch the print. I want you to come out here and we'll screen it. So they brought basically it was a completed screen of the film.
There's some princesses, man.
Right. They were in Neil Young's studio and Neil Young said, okay, hey, I need the volume on, like I need the dialogue, I need the audio for the film as I'm doing. So Neil Young's, his idea was to just watch the movie and play along, like improvise.
Yeah.
The funny part of the whole ordeal was Neil Young said, okay, wait, I got to go get some guitars. You guys hang out here. I'll be right back. So he left. And Jim Jarmusch was like, oh, man. He was talking to one of his producers. He said, listen, I don't think this is going to work.
This isn't worth it, man.
Neil is going to play to the soundtrack, but if he's playing and there's dialogue, it's going to get recorded together and I'm not going to be able to separate it. If I don't want it there, if I want to move the audio, it's not going to work out. He said, I don't know if this is going to be okay. Neil Young walked back in and he said, hey, man, just relax. It's all going to be okay. And Jim Jarmusch is like, what are you talking about? He goes, you realize you're in my recording studio. There's like 200 microphones. I heard you in the other room, heard the entire conversation. He said, just chill out. It's going to be great. Don't worry about it.
I got you, man.
You know, of course, when Neil Young tells you don't worry about it, you just don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I went on way too long into all this. That's how he got Gary Farmer and Neil Young.
You know, Neil Young's recording of that too works really well for the movie. And I was reading an article and this guy said, oh man, I really wanted the soundtrack because it sounded so cool.
Right, yeah.
He goes, it was not good listening to it on its own.
No.
And then interspersed between this, like the scores is Johnny Depp reciting poetry.
Yeah, William Blake's poetry.
Yeah. So he goes, it's you know what? The soundtrack was not good.
The soundtrack was literally made for the movie as it was being watched.
In the movie, yes.
So yeah, I think a broken up and explicitly released soundtrack just wouldn't sound right.
Yeah, he's like, I was so disappointed. I loved the soundtrack, but it was with the movie.
Yeah.
The only other thing I want to say about Gary Farmer is that he has been nominated 3 different times for the Independent Spirit Award for Best Supporting Male. So, all right, let's move on to Lance Henriksen.
All right.
So he plays Cole Wilson. He's one of the bounty hunters, most well known as playing Bishop in the Alien franchise. I think, I mean, for me at least, he's most well known in
every time I think of him, that's where my mind goes. With, there's a lot of other. He has been in so many good movies.
He has.
And he's had so many good roles.
I think the other thing people would recognize him from is his Frank Black in the miniseries Millennium and X-Files.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So, if you didn't know him from Alien movies, you may know him from those. He also has done a slew of voice work. He did a voice for Tarzan, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. He was in the Mass Effect trilogy, which, near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah, we love Mass Effect.
But he's also done movies like The Right Stuff, The Terminator, Hard Target, Color of Night, The Quick and the Dead.
Another Western.
Scream 3.
Oh, sure.
Yep. He has a really interesting background because he did not come from a good home life. His father was a Norwegian merchant sailor, and his nickname was Icewater. He spent most of his life at sea. And then his mother, she kind of was a struggling dancer, waitress, model. And then his paternal grandmother was a Sami reindeer herder.
Huh.
His parents divorced when he was 2. And she said at the age 7, her mom actually His mom actually handed him his birth certificate and said, "You'll always know who you are," and then pushed him out the house.
Oh.
He said he didn't actually leave the home until he was 12, but he said it was rough between 7 and 12 because she didn't want him there.
No doubt.
He got in trouble a lot growing up, and he actually left school after completing only the first grade, and he was actually illiterate until he was 30 years old. But 30 was about the time that he started getting into movies. He was working in a studio, and he got his first set designer job, and then he got his first acting gig, and that's when he started learning how to read. So he was not illiterate anymore.
No.
Within a year, he was already on his way.
Problem solved.
His very first role, though, they had to record all of his lines so that he could listen to them because he couldn't read them all. His first film appearance was The Outsider from 1961. He's also a artist. He does murals and clay. I don't know if he still does it, but he was selling a lot of his clay on a website online for a while. He's also written a 5-issue comic book called To Hell You Ride. Millie Avital.
Mm-hmm.
So she plays Thel,
Mm-hmm.
Thel Russell, who is a former prostitute who now sells paper flowers instead.
Very, very small part, but really the
antithesis. It's like the
impetus
whole
of the whole thing.
If that hadn't gone down, none of the stuff
Mm-hmm.
coming after it would have gone down. She's actually an Israeli actress first, but she maintains a career both in Israel and in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
She was in Stargate,
Oh, right.
which I had.
The movie, right?
I believe so, yeah. Polish Wedding, which I've never heard of, but apparently it's pretty popular. Bad Seed. She's also in Law and Order, Criminal Intent, and Special Victims Unit.
Couldn't escape.
Could not escape that. Aside from that, the only two I just want to touch on very briefly, and we won't go into too much on that, but Michael Wincott is one of the other bounty hunters. He's the really talkative one who won't shut up.
Never shuts up.
He's also a Canadian-born actor. He attended Juilliard, so he is a very well-trained Canadian actor. He says he holds art in high regard over money.
Yeah, okay.
Which I love that.
Then I understand that.
Yeah.
The roles he takes are never particularly huge roles.
And usually plays the villain.
Usually the villain.
The villains don't always get the credit they deserve.
He's got that raspy voice.
Yeah. Oh, that was okay. Not really.
I can't
do
really
that one.
Can't do a Michael Wincott.
He's been in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He played Top Dollar in The Crow. He was a music mogul, Philo Gant in Strange Days. He played a mercenary in Alien Resurrection. He's also a cinematographer in the movie Nope.
Yeah.
We did Get Out, but done by the same guy
Jordan
who did
Peele.
Yep.
Yeah, you will always know Michael Wincott by his voice. Jim Jarmusch, like you said, he's quite the auteur. He apparently is not super controlling, though. On this set, we already talked about how Gary Farmer and Neil Young, it was a lot of effort to get them on the film.
Yeah.
But on set, there was a lot of conflicting personalities.
Yeah.
So Johnny Depp still, at that point, I would say, still kind of in the infancy of his
Still learning,
career.
yeah.
Huge fan of Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
Marlon Brando, notoriously not a huge fan of directors. Hated him. Johnny Depp happened to be reading Marlon Brando's biography at the time he was filming this film.
And got sassy.
And he was pretty sassy with Jim Jarmusch. Jim said
Which is funny because they're great friends
They're
now.
great friends. Super good friends now. Michael Wincott, apparently really easy to work with as an actor.
Okay.
Except that he doesn't like sticking to scripts.
He likes
to almost
ad-lib.
exclusively improvise.
I mean, he's good at it.
So Jarmusch had said that, hey, in this scene, can we do something?
Can you knock it off?
Can you say something here or there? Like come up with something to reference whatever.
Yeah.
And apparently Michael Wincott would be like, okay, give me a sec. So he'd walk off for like 2 or 3 minutes, come back, and he'd have a line just ready to go.
Yeah.
And he said it was great.
Oh, okay, great.
The one other kind of really conflicting personality was, so Robert Mitchum has a part in this film as Mr. Dickinson. Robert Mitchum never improvises, never deviates from the script.
To the script.
There was an anecdote that I'd heard from Jim Jarmusch saying that there was a point where he wanted to basically transpose 2 of Robert Mitchum's lines. So take one sentence that he was saying first and put it after the one he was going to be saying second.
He had a hard time with that, huh?
He went to Robert Mitchum's trailer. Robert Mitchum's manager was there. And he said, hey, is Robert around? I need to ask him to, I just want to switch these 2 lines.
Yeah.
The manager said, Mr. Mitchum doesn't deviate from the script.
Well, la-ti-da, I'm the director, man.
Jim Jarmusch is like, well, I just need him to, it's still the same lines, just need to put them in different order.
It's just 2 lines, man.
He's like, Mr. Mitchum does the script. And Jim was like, can I talk to him, please? So he was able to talk to Robert Mitchum, and I don't remember the exact line. I should have wrote it down, but I didn't expect to actually
get into it,
bring this anecdote along. Robert Mitchum just kind of got real catty with him, and he made some really sly remark. Jim Jarmusch, when I was listening to this interview where he relayed this anecdote, never actually said whether or not he got Robert Mitchum.
Never got to that,
switch the lines.
Probably not.
Yeah, he probably just said, screw it.
Yeah.
Say it as you're going to say
Whatever, it's fine. The only other person I want to mention super quick is Eugene Beard.
Mm-hmm.
He plays Johnny the Kid Pickett. He's the youngest, the third bounty hunter, the one that doesn't last as long as the other 2. He's most known for Wink in 8 Mile, but he also does a lot of voices for video games. So he did Marcus Boomer Boone in Battlefield Hardline. He was Delmont Del Walker in Gears of War 4 and 5, which we've played.
Yeah.
He also voiced Xander Freemaker in the Lego Star Wars The Freemaker Adventures. Yeah. There's Billy Bob Thornton's in here.
Yeah, there's a F-ton of cameos in this movie.
Michelle Thrush is Nobody's girlfriend. Gibby Haynes, Alfred Molina, John Hurt. We already mentioned Robert Mitchum, Iggy Pop. Gabriel Byrne is in here. Jared Harris. Crispin Glover we mentioned already. Yeah, a lot of actors in this film.
You mentioned Gibby Haynes. I don't know if most people would know who he is necessarily. He is the lead singer of the Butthole Surfers. When William Blake first arrives at Machine, there's a cowboy kind of in an alley between 2 buildings getting head. He's the man with a gun in the alley. They don't say that. They don't say with head. I understand why
on
they
the Wikipedia
don't
page, but
credit him as the man getting head in the alleyway.
What's happening? Yeah. All right. So should we move on to some of the acclaim of the film?
Oh, let's move along here.
Yeah. I think we spent way too much time on actors, but there's so many good ones in this one. So this film got 7.26 legs. It had an estimated budget of about $9 million, but it didn't quite make back.
No.
That.
Not at all.
No.
Not even close.
Not even close. I mean, even if you look at the worldwide number, they did 1,078,000.
Yeah.
Most of it was here in the States. It was 1,025,000. Opening weekend was 104,000, almost 105,000. So opening weekend, it was looking a little promising, but then kind of, I think, petered off.
Died off real fast.
It's
not a typical Western.
No, so, and you're going to be disappointed if that's what you're going in there looking for.
The critics reviewed it pretty harshly, honestly. It got in the kind of 70-ish range.
Well, I mean, and that's mainstream reviewers. Internationally, the critics actually loved this film and even considered it a visionary masterpiece. Here in the States, I think we just expect a certain kind of Western. And
most Westerns are very rah, rah, rah Americana. This film was actually very much antithetical to that. It was trying to point out how absurd American culture was at the time.
Yeah.
And still is, let's be honest.
It's really hailed as one of the few films that's made by a Caucasian that presents an authentic Native American culture and character. I mean, and it's not often you get to see a film like that.
Yeah.
So it hasn't gotten a lot of awards, if really any.
No, I think it got pretty well ignored.
It's a Criterion Collection.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
that's notable enough, honestly.
Yeah, due to its profound and unique vision of the Western genre.
Consolation prize.
Yeah, pretty much.
Taglines on this one. Sometimes it's preferable not to travel with a dead man. The next one that I have written down is no one can survive becoming a legend, which is pretty much the ordeal throughout this entire movie.
It is, because he actually does become really notable, too.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, people are trying to get him. He's got a bounty on his head. He's becoming really, really well known, and then dies off into the sunset. I'd like to talk about the inspiration for the film.
Oh, right.
Because a lot of the inspiration for the film comes from William Blake's poetry itself.
William Blake, genuinely a real poet, artist, painter who lived in England from 1757 through 1827.
And from some of the 20th century pop cultural references that kind of pop up throughout the film. The film actually contains a lot of references to William Blake's poetry and his works. So aside from nobody reciting at least 3 of his poems in the film, Cole the bounty hunter actually warns his companions about not drinking the standing water.
Yeah.
And that actually references Proverb of Hell, which is one of Blake's poems. And in the poem, it's expect poison from standing water is the quote in the poem. He wrote the Songs of Innocence and of Experience, which is like 2 books put together, basically, which reminded me personally of Blake and Nobody, respectively. Blake being the Songs of Innocence and Nobody being the Song of Experience. I don't think that was a connection I had read about, but
it makes a lot of sense.
I thought in my head, I was like, oh, that's really cool.
No,
Those 2 books.
Yeah, that's a good correlation, to be honest.
Nobody takes it upon himself to guide Blake to, quote, the bridge made of water.
I will take you to the bridge made of waters. The mirror. Then you will be taken up to the next level of the world.
Place where William Blake is from, where his spirit belongs.
Yeah.
The quote actually suggests a journey or transition to a higher level of understanding or reality. And the bridge made of water is also referenced in William Blake's work, particularly in his lithograph, The Ancient of Days, which depicts the creator resting atop a mountain, seen by some as representing a bridge to the divine. Thell's name itself comes directly from some of Blake's work, the Book of Thell.
Hard to dance around that one.
Kind of hard to dance around that one, and I love that name. Never heard that name before, but Thell's a great name.
Short for Thelma or something, I would imagine.
I like Thell.
Yeah.
The scenes with Thell, which kind of culminate in the bedroom during that murder scene, kind of visually enacts one of Blake's poems, The Sick Rose. And in that poem, it says, O Rose, thou art sick, the invisible worm that flies in the night, in the howling storm, has found out thy bed of crimson joy, and his dark secret love does thy life destroy. Some of the nods to the 20th century that he put in this film. Benmont Tench, he's the man at the campsite played by Jared Harris. He's named after Benmont Tench, the keyboardist for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Billy Bob Thornton's character, Big George Draculius, is named for the record producer George Draculius. The name of Mitchum's character, John Dickinson, is a reference to rock producer Jim Dickinson.
The bounty hunters Cole Wilson and Johnny Kid Pickett, Wilson Pickett. Throughout the film, most of the things that nobody says are passages from he's obsessed with
William Blake.
William Blake.
But I understand William Blake. You were a poet and a painter. And now you are a killer of white men.
When he first finds out that Bill Blake is William Blake, nobody genuinely thinks he is a reincarnation, a spirit of William Blake, the poet. So the whole movie long, he's like, every time he quotes a poem, he's like, don't you remember your poetry?
Yeah.
What is going on here?
And that's why he stays with him the whole time, too, because he feels that he needs to make sure that William Blake finds his
way back to where his spirit came from.
Yeah.
There's even a point near the kind of middle-ish of the film where William Blake, feeling very frustrated, he even says, since we've been together, I haven't understood a word you've said. Not one word. And it's because he keeps reciting this poetry.
Yeah.
All this...
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. All of the pearls of wisdom that nobody passes on to William Blake are basically all passages from William Blake's poems. The funny thing is when Jim Jarmusch was writing the script, he said he was writing, and when he needs a distraction, when he gets he needs to move to something else, he'll pick up a book and start reading. So he had just sort of randomly grabbed a book of William Blake's poetry.
Yeah, like you randomly do.
Yeah,
I have like 7 copies laying around the house.
He said at the time, he was kind of obsessing over William Blake.
Okay, well, that makes way more sense.
So he happened to have it handy. And he said when he was reading William Blake's poetry, he was like, wow, a lot of this speaks to me as knowledge that could be in this film. And in fact, the character Bill Blake in this movie was not initially named William Blake. He said it wasn't until he was reading through William Blake's poetry that, you remember how I said he lets the characters tell him how the story goes? He said when he was reading, he felt as though that was William Blake's way of telling Jim that William Blake wanted to be in this movie. So that's how
It's weird.
William Blake came to be in this movie.
I do love it, though.
It is pretty awesome. It's pretty stellar. I like it.
We had talked about the film critics being very heavily critical of this film.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that a lot of critics do have to agree on, though, is that it is pretty regarded as a very well-researched film in terms of Native American culture.
Sure.
Which I think Jarmusch has been, told he did a great job on the film with that.
He's actually received awards from some Native peoples for his awards and some recognitions for his work with this movie.
I mean, he's a non-Native American,
mm-hmm.
and he was able to kind of understand the nuance behind, some of the characters and the difference between the different Native American tribes, and to not be overtly stereotypical.
Right.
Even back when this film was being made, that we were still stereotyping Native American cultures.
Hardcore.
Putting them all into one group, they all sound the same, they all look the same. This is not that film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is his own person.
Yep.
He's super cool. And they all have, they talk about different tribes in this film and what tribe he's from and why he doesn't go to his tribe and where he doesn't belong and where he does belong. And
I really liked the scene very near the end where William Blake gets shot again. And nobody takes him to, he's in desperate need of repair.
Yeah.
So he takes him to another native camp.
Yeah.
And at this native camp, when he arrives, the native people there look at nobody, and it's almost like a look of, what the hell are you doing here? You're not part of us.
Yeah.
But he pulls William Blake out of the canoe, and William Blake, he's stumbling. He doesn't look good. And nobody just simply kind of shouts to the people. He says, William Blake. And not that any of the native people there know who William Blake is. They just happen to see a white man who's hurt and in trouble. Stereotypically, most Westerns would have taken that and, tried to, who knows, maybe tried to kill the white man or whatever. It would have just made them thoughtless savages.
Mm-hmm.
In this film, they went to his aid immediately.
They all gather around him to help him.
Despite not wanting nobody there because he's not part of their tribe, they still wanted to help this man, not just savage people.
Jarmusch, when he was creating the character of Nobody, he wanted to create a character that wasn't a savage that needed to be eliminated, like you see in a lot of other films. He wanted him to be, he didn't want him to be a noble innocent that knows all and is like just another cliche. So he had a lot of ideas for Nobody's character that, really made him a more complicated human being than what you would see in
than just a stereotype.
Yeah. He actually intentionally left in conversations in the Cree and the Blackfoot language, untranslated, without subtitles, exclusively for the members of those nations to understand. And he actually included several in-jokes that were aimed at Native American viewers.
Yeah.
Just specifically for them.
Yep.
I thought that was really thoughtful.
Yeah, I think that's great. It helps immerse the viewer in the fact that, William Blake, he's from Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Cleveland, Cleveland, Ohio.
So he wouldn't be familiar with native languages.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're talking, it would have been just a mystery to him. And this whole wilderness is a mystery to him.
He is so lost. And way out of he's out of your element, Donnie.
Yeah, definitely out of your element, Donnie. A lot of people along the way continually ask him for tobacco.
Yeah.
So
particularly Nobody.
Yeah.
Do you have any tobacco?
I don't smoke.
Fell asks him for tobacco, and that's sort of insignificant, more just the start of the gag.
Yeah.
And he says, I don't have tobacco, I don't smoke. So then he meets Nobody. And Nobody asks him for tobacco 3 or 4 different times.
A lot of times. And every time he's like, I don't smoke.
Why would I have tobacco?
Why would I have tobacco?
You may, as the viewer, be left to assume that Nobody just wants tobacco. Because in native cultures, tobacco is very revered.
Yeah.
It's useful in ceremonies, as
social situations.
As gifts, it's very valuable. In this film, it's less that Nobody wants tobacco. Maybe he does, who knows. But really he sees this dead man.
Yeah, already dead.
Tobacco is useful as a spirit on your journey through the spirit world.
You take that
so
with
he's
you.
he's
Yeah.
wanting William Blake to have tobacco for William Blake's journey, not for himself.
Him finally getting the tobacco is actually my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Where they go into that like little trading post, and that's the first time you see William Blake like pull a gun on somebody and get really, and I mean, he's pulled a gun in the beginning and stuff, but like get aggressive and be like in control of the situation. First he asked for the tobacco. Nobody wanted it. He said, I don't have any.
Yeah.
So then William Blake asked for it. And he's like, oh, I might have a little bit stashed away.
Only.
For friends only. My own private stash. And I think William Blake was just like, that.
Screw
No.
this, man.
Yeah.
That opening sequence, it's Crispin Glover as the trained coal man.
Mm-hmm.
And he sits down and he just starts talking. He's like, look out the window.
Look out the window.
Isn't it sort of reminiscent of when you're in the boat?
And doesn't it remind you of when you're in the boat?
You sound just like him.
You're looking at the sky. The scenery is moving, but the boat's not, it's stationary. You know, something to that effect.
Yeah.
And he goes through this whole
when you're watching it, you're like, what is
sentence.
he talking about?
It mirrors almost the ending. William Blake said, I'm heading to Machine for a job. And Crispin Glover's character says, why are you going to Machine for a job? Especially, you're more likely to find a coffin.
Yeah.
You know, so it's almost like you're going there. This is where you're going to die.
This is where you're going to die. Yeah, this is where it all begins to end.
And his face was all blackened from coal. And he looks familiar, human.
Yeah.
But he looks unsettlingly different from everyone else around.
Sounds unsettlingly different,
so it's almost like he's sort of this demon presenting this. He even says Machine is hell. Why are you going to hell?
That doesn't explain why you've come all the way out here. All the way out here to hell.
Which sort of leads into the idea of, we talked about Clerks being sort of an allegory for the Divine Comedy.
Yeah.
You can almost see a Divine Comedy-ish kind of ordeal here. And in some ways it's reversed, but Machine would be your allegory for Dante's Inferno.
Mm-hmm.
The wilderness would be your allegory for Purgatorio. And the water, the ocean, the mirror water, your allegory for Paradiso. In the books, Beatrice guides Dante through Paradiso, but Thel would be almost a stand-in for Beatrice, and she's leading him through Machine, sort of. In the Divine Comedy, of course, Virgil is the one that guides Dante through Inferno and Purgatorio. In this one, it's nobody who guides him through Purgatorio to Paradiso.
Yeah.
Similar, but not sort of allegory for...
It's funny that you bring it up too, that there's this difference between Machine and the wilderness, because Jarmusch said that he actually even shot them differently.
Yeah.
He shot, Machine on a stationary trolley. Everything was very, sterile. And then when they went to the woods, he purposely shot it with more movement and changed the way that he shot it to give it a different feel.
When William Blake's walking through Machine, you see skulls everywhere. You see pelts everywhere. You see coffins, just death
and depravity
everywhere. In the wilderness, you could say that the scenery is all it's trees everywhere. It's a very similar sort of landscape, very much like purgatory kind of scenery. It's all the same. And I think the black and white really helped that, because if it were color, you would see splashes of color, things that would differentiate your visual input. So I think the black and white really did this film a service, especially with the symbolism.
Yeah. And I don't know if he was trying to go for that. I know that he said he did it in black and white to kind of mimic some of the old Westerns and things like that. But.
Yeah, he did. I did hear an interview where he was talking about why he chose black and white. And one, you like you said, to mimic the older style Westerns. But two, he said, as viewers of film, we use all these senses to make us comfortable in the watch. He said, by taking away the color, it unsettles you. That was another reason he wanted to do that, is because the film is not supposed to be easy to watch. It's supposed to be a little, not like unnerving,
right,
but just unfamiliar, which is what William Blake, his whole experience is unfamiliar. Everything.
Yeah, you feel it. What do you think the scene with the dead baby deer was about? There's
a few scenes where you start to see William Blake along his journey, where he really begins transforming from the naive city dweller to the much more accepting of his spirit and native culture even. There's a point where, and I'll get to the deer in a minute, but there's a point a little bit before that where nobody recites a William Blake quote to him that says, that weapon will replace your tongue. You will learn to speak through it, and your poetry will now be written in blood. So the first time you see William Blake shoot a gun, he's not proficient at all. There's bullets flying everywhere. 5
times before he even hits a person.
From that point forward, William Blake always hits with his shots. Always. He also ends up getting some face paint put on him by nobody. And you can see him understanding the wilderness more from the deer. And it was almost like him lying down, showing respect to nature. He was saddened by the death of the deer, but not saddened by the death of any of the white men previously.
Right.
It's just sort of another way that he's becoming more in touch and in tune with the things that nobody was trying to teach him and understanding, I'm dying. Yeah.
So it's really interesting that you brought that up because this segues me into something that I wanted to talk about perfectly.
All right.
Because just when you think he might be grasping at something and like trying to like finally understanding his impending journey, nobody tells him that he is going back to where he came from at the very end as he's pushing him, in that canoe out to the water.
It's time for you to leave now, William Blake. Time for you to go back to where you came from.
And he replies, "You mean Cleveland?" So you might laugh because it's funny that he says that. And you don't really quite know if he's just saying that because he's still being completely naive or if he's just saying it to be funny.
Yeah. I do think it was more of an accepting tongue-in-cheek comment that he was making to nobody because in that same scene, William Blake holds up a twist of tobacco and he holds it up to nobody. He says, "I have tobacco." And nobody says,
"The tobacco is for your wage, William Blake."
And William Blake looks at him with a kind of a smirk saying, "I don't smoke." I think he finally understood what he needs it for. But that's, my thought on it.
Johnny Depp makes a brief cameo as William Blake in the film L.A. Without a Map. Just FYI.
I've never seen it. So I guess I would never know.
But he does make a cameo as that character. So nobody makes a cameo in a film again. And so does William Blake. Anyway, I think I am tapped.
Well, I guess since we're out of stuff to say. I mean, we could probably find more stuff to say, plenty.
Yeah, I definitely kept it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess with that, it's time to hit the old dusty trail.
Yep, we should round up the wagons and call it a day.
And what that means, of course, is with everyone leaving us, you can still message us. Just you go down to your local postmaster, put it in the mail. I believe the Pony Express will bring it around.
Paul Revere that stuff.
Yeah, Or look for us on themovietheaterlobby.com. Email us at themovietheaterlobby@gmail.com. Find the show on Blue Sky primarily at The Movie Lobby and on YouTube at The Movie Theater Lobby. Go ahead and find me, Brandon, if you want to while we're there. Brand MC on Blue Sky. And Leia, give me a little thing. Yeah.
You can find me, Leia McClevey, at LM Nerdroom on just about every social that's out there and at lmnerdroom@gmail.com.
So coming up, we're going to transition from this very unique vision of Old West to a very unique vision of the future.
In the movie Strange Days?
Yes,
Woohoo!
That's the one. Let's call it an acid future.
An acid future film.
It's not really, but let's just say that. It's a little cyberpunky.
Yeah.
Great movie regardless. Let's thank everybody for giving us their time and listen and all that stuff. Please, wherever you listen, subscribe to us. Please, some stars is great too.
Yep. Share us with your friends, your family.
Share with friends, family.
Coworkers.
All that stuff as well. Leia, thank you again for another fun week.
Yeah, thank you too.
And we will talk to everybody next week on
The Movie Theater Lobby.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.
You William Blake?
Yes, I am. Do you know my poetry?